I was thinking about this because I told you guys that my wife and I have a little baby boy on the way. He is due the end of next month. So it'll be blink my eyes and it is going to be here really quick. One of the things that we have been doing over the last few weekends is we have been doing some of these birthing classes because this is my wife's first. And so she wants to prepare a little bit for the birth process, sort of ease her mind a little bit, give her some tools to cope, things of that nature. So we've been doing these classes. We were doing these classes with several other couples. And through the course of the conversation, there was one person in particular that was sort of explaining the reasoning for what they were doing in a way of like kind of a woe is me sort of way is how I would explain it. And I started thinking about the difference between how a lot of things are now and how they used to be. Because, I'm old enough that, when I was growing up, there was a lot of mind your own business. It was just kind of mind your own business, mind your P's and Q's. This isn't, take care of your own problems. Don't worry about mine. Now we live in a world where everybody shares their problems online. And I'm not talking about sharing in a healthy sort of communal way. I'm talking about people just celebrate. It's almost like being taken advantage of or being a victim or being down and out has become in vogue. It's become a thing that people are sort of emotionally rewarded for. It's like, oh, you poor thing, you go girl, like that sort of thing. And I don't think that's generally all that helpful. And what has happened is I think that there's a lot of people that tell themselves this lie. And the lie is that I have problems and they don't. Now, who they are sort of just depends on your problem, sort of depends on who the enemy to your victimhood is. So they could be someone like I'm short and they're tall. I'm poor and they're rich. Like I'm white, they're black, I'm whatever. Whoever the other is, we tend to look at ourselves and say, I have XYZ problem and they don't. And the reason that's a lie is because they also have problems. And their problems might be different than your problems, but it's a massive mistake to assume that I have problems and they don't. Their life is easy. If I got to a certain point, or if I was a certain way, or if I was born into a certain family, or if I had a certain background, then I wouldn't have problems like them. They don't have problems. And I think that's a really, really bad way to look at life. And what ends up happening, and I think this is sort of the big mistake and summary of what I'm trying to say, is that when someone takes an obstacle in their life, and we all have obstacles, they might be different. Like I'm a tall guy, I have tall guy obstacles. You might be a short person and have short person obstacles. This weekend, we did like an open house baby shower. One of the neighbors came over and he got to talking to me about tall guy problems because, I'm like 6'4", he's like 6'7". He has more tall guy problems than I do, but we can relate. Public transportation, buses, planes, not our favorite thing. Cars, motorcycles, they don't all fit. So we sat around and talked about tall guy problems. And obviously that person can relate. But one of the things that's not healthy and not good is it's not good to take the obstacles that you have in life and make that your identity. And the reason is this, is throughout all of human history, there have been people who have had problems, who have overcome those things. They have been victorious over those things. And those are some of the people that we actually admire the most, people that were born into a bad home or into a bad circumstance, someone who went through a bad thing in their relationship or bad thing with their family or bad thing with their finances, bad thing with their community, their country. Some of the people that we just admire the most, some of the most amazing human beings that have ever lived, the reason that we say they're amazing and way we think they're amazing is because they have overcome obstacles and overcome great obstacles. They have become the victor over situations that would crush a lot of people. Now, we innately know that that's admirable, and we know that that's a good thing. But our society now has started rewarding victimhood, and you can sort of be tricked into believing that the okay thing to do is to start identifying yourself by your problems instead of coming up with solutions for those problems. And I say all this because over and over again, you will hear me talk about the fact that starting a chiropractic practice and being a small business owner and doing all of that, it is a difficult thing. When people say, oh, like, oh, I'm afraid to start my own practice, I don't try to downplay it. The reason you're afraid is because you should be afraid. It is a difficult thing you are trying to do. And there is a good chance that you will fail at it. And you'll definitely fail in certain degrees. That doesn't mean you'll holistically fail. There are a lot of people, and I did this, like my first few years in practice were an absolute dumpster fire. And it's a miracle that I managed to get my head above water and start paying back some bills and actually start, getting my practice looking like a halfway decent business. If you would have saw how it was in the beginning, you would think like, this is never going to happen. Everybody has failures. But if you start to identify yourself by that, you start to absorb that, and that becomes who you are. And that becomes how you see yourself. And that becomes how you talk about things and how you frame everything. You're going to make life that is already hard, you're going to make it harder. And this particular person, it was in these birthing classes, like she was explaining like why she didn't want to use certain healthcare professionals and why she wanted to do this and why they were doing this and why she was doing that. And listen, she was very sincere. I'm not doubting her sincerity at all. She was very emotional about some of the stuff she was talking about. The problem is, I think she's wrong. And what I mean by that is that this kind of obstacle that she had, which is very much an obstacle, it's a very real thing, has become her identity to the point that every single thing she does is kind of filtered through that. And to the point that she feels so weighted and so there's so much opposition in her life and so much that's going on with her that it's just crushing. It's limiting the opportunities in her life. It's such a weighty thing. And I'm like, I know a lot of people that are in the exact same situation. I've met a lot of people that have that exact same story, but they haven't absorbed it as their identity and this thing that they can't possibly do anything about. And they're basically conquered by the them that is making things worse and oppressing. It's just a terrible way. And I realized that maybe I sound like the old dude that's out of touch, but everybody's got problems. If you think they don't, I remember, I'll tell you a personal story where I was a little bit jealous of one of my friends who graduated after me. And I had such a hard time those first few years. He got out into practice and had a really booming practice fairly quickly. And I was sort of like, man, even though we were doing okay at that point, it was like sort of frustrating that even me doing okay and doing better, I wasn't nearly doing as well as he was. And he got out of school a year or two after I did. And I wasn't mad about him doing well from the standpoint of he's an awesome human being. Couldn't happen to a better person. What I was frustrated about is why am I not doing well? So there's a little bit of like a jealousy there. And I remember sitting down and talking to him and having lunch, and we were just talking about life and talking about things and whatever. And he shared with me something that I didn't know. And that was that him and his wife, and they were a little bit older than me. They were an older couple. They'd been married for a while. Him and his wife were wanting to have kids. They were trying to have kids. They had been trying for a long time and they'd been unsuccessful. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm sitting here, and at the time I had 2 kids. I have 3.5 right now, 3 3/4, right? One on the way. But at the time I remember I had 2 kids, healthy, beautiful, wonderful kids that I wouldn't trade for anything. And I remember sitting there thinking, who's the blessed person at this table? I wouldn't trade my kids for a bigger practice. I wouldn't trade my kids for any amount of money. And I'm looking at this guy who is a good guy, great guy. And I'm looking at his practice and his car and these things that are nicer than what I have, and thinking that I'm jealous of him because, because I have problems, but they don't. And I realized in that moment, they have problems too. And it actually turns out their problems were worse than my problems. My problem was that I wanted to pay back my debt a little faster. I wanted to buy a little bit newer car. That was my problem. His problem was we may never have kids, and we want to have kids. We want to have our own family. We want to have this legacy. We want to, and we're struggling to do that. Who has the real problem? So I would like to encourage you to reframe how you think about obstacles in your life. Everybody has problems. If you think you're not going to have problems, you are setting yourself up for unnecessary frustration in life. But if you think that you have problems that nobody else has and you can't possibly get over them, you're also setting yourself up for a really frustrating life and making life harder than it has to be. There's a ditch on both sides of that road that is really, really, really unhealthy to be in. You can't expect everything's going to go grand and you're not going to have problems. I did a podcast a while back talking about the reality of life and how, there were so many of us in my class that it's like, we're thinking about our careers and whatever. And we didn't know that some of us were like, some of the people I went to chiropractic college with are not with us anymore. Like they've died. Some of us have lost kids. Many of us have gone through divorce, including myself. Like many of us have gone through terrible family tragedies. A lot of us have gone through career changes, financial problems, significant stuff. And I know that nobody tells you, like, it's not popular. Like that doesn't fill the seminar seats, right? To tell you like, hey, life's hard enough. But even though every single one of us in a room have different advantages and different disadvantages based on stuff that we can't control, it doesn't really benefit anybody in that room to identify themselves by those shortcomings and then go through life as a victim. It just doesn't. And there are people that are in your exact situation with your exact deficiencies who have overcome. And so there's no reason you can't do it because it has been done before. But you have to have the mentality and the grit and the mindset, sort of the starting point for that. And in a society where it is becoming more and more popular to be a victim, and it's becoming more and more popular to look around at them, whoever they are, and say, they have and I don't. They're winning and I'm losing. They have an advantage and I don't. They're privileged and I'm not. It's not helpful. It just isn't. Life isn't fair. There's no possible way to make it fair. Even if you attempt to make it fair, the attempt to make it fair is unfair. I even ran into this when I was a kid. Like I worked so hard at being good at basketball, and when my other people were playing video games and goofing around and doing other stuff, I was shooting shots and doing drills and doing jump training and doing all of this stuff to get better at basketball. And I would occasionally have someone that would say something about it's unfair because I get a lot of playing time and their son doesn't. And it always aggravated me because I thought, your son, first of all, doesn't put in the work. Your son, second of all, doesn't have the natural talents, which is, I realize, unfair. Sorry. He wasn't born as fast as me. He wasn't born as tall as me. He wasn't born with the physical abilities that I have, but I've also continued to develop. So even if he works as hard as I do, he's not going to get the same results. Sorry, life's not fair. But what's also not fair is that I could play in college. I could get a scholarship. So when I'm sitting on the bench, when your kid who's lazy, who isn't gifted, who's not going to get a scholarship and who's never going to play in college, they're getting time to be fair. And I'm sitting on the bench, not getting time and not getting to show my skills and not getting more eyes on me. We're being fair to your kid. We're being unfair to me. It's impossible to try to force life to be fair without being unfair. It's just the way it is. So we all need to accept the fact that life's not fair and start looking at solutions to problems instead of taking those problems on as if they are some sort of tattoo that cannot be washed off. As if you can't be the first in your family to do X, Y, Z. You can, in fact, be the first in your family to do X, Y, Z. No one in my family has done this. No one from my town has done this. No one from my class has done this. Shut up. Just do it. Nike, right? Just do it. Stop whining about it. Does that mean you'll be successful? No. You might try as hard as you can and do everything you can, and someone less talented than you who's not working as hard may in fact do better in the measurable ways. You can't control that. What you can control is what you do. And I'll close it up by saying this. The future you, and I have said this so many times on this podcast, the future you who is successful, the person who is further down the path, the person you want to become, that dream person that person makes more money, sees more people, helps, has a bigger impact, has better relationships, whatever. That future you, the one that's great and is who you want to become, knows things that you don't currently know and has habits that you don't currently have. Start heading in that direction. Start learning some things. Keep learning things because you don't know what those things are that you need to learn. And start developing good habits. It's not a good habit? Being a victim. It's not a good habit is constantly saying them versus me. Who cares about them? Who is them? Even if everybody in the world is more privileged than you, how does that help you? Do it. Figure out, how can I be better tomorrow? What habit can I start today that I'm going to be really, really, really glad that I did 3 years from now? What thing can I start doing that the future me is going to be really happy about? That's how you start to have to think about it. And I wanted to talk about it today because so much of how you think about yourself, and listen, I'm not saying that when you're a victim, you're not thinking about yourself. You are thinking about yourself. You're thinking about yourself wrongly. What I'm saying is that I'm not even saying you should think about yourself more. I just think you should think about yourself correctly. You should probably think about yourself less. But also, when you do think about yourself, if you don't think about yourself correctly, you're just making life harder than it has to be. Thinking that you're better than you are, not helpful. Thinking that you're worse than you are, equally not helpful. So get your mind right. Stop being a victim. Life is hard. Life's not fair. I'm having a dad moment here. You don't have to be the victim. You can be better. You need to learn some new things. You need to develop some new habits. You need to head in the right direction, be consistent, work hard. All those boring things that you don't actually want to hear, that don't sell. It doesn't get you followers on Instagram and it doesn't sell seminars. Like those are all the things that are true. Hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully one person that's listening to this will be like, you know what? It's time that I just stop being a victim, stop worrying about them, and start improving my life because I can in fact do it. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for subscribing. I'll talk to you on the next episode.